Despite The Last of Us being one of the more beloved games of the past decade, when The Last of Us TV series was announced for HBO, people knew it was a disaster in the making, because Neil Druckmann was very heavily involved, even after the debacle that was The Last of Us Part 2, where Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann were clearly motivated by identity politics, made changes to the game, decided that they would lie to the fans over and over again, and the fans totally and completely rejected it. It was an embarrassment for Naughty Dog, and it really devalued the entire franchise as a whole. Not only did you have that working against them, but immediately they started coming up with woke casting decisions, with race swaps, with turning characters disabled just for the hell of it, just for identity politics. And when you start down that road, we all know it inevitably leads to disaster. Then we started to hear the showrunner, Craig Mazin, speak out and show that he has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to video games. This may be one of my favorite quotes that he's had. Most games are pretty simple. You jump on enemies, you die, you have to insert another quarter to continue. The Last of Us changed that. There's a pretty simple iteration here of video game history. Super Mario Bros. 1972, literally no games until The Last of Us in 2013. And now we have some of the most idiotic comments you can possibly imagine coming from somebody who's supposed to be doing justice to these video games. Last of Us showrunner says death in the game means less because it's just, quote, watching pixels die. The Last of Us screenwriter and showrunner Craig Mazin compares death in the game to that in the upcoming show. Well, I guess I could see this argument, right? If you were actually going to kill people for this show. Somehow I don't think that's the case. Somehow I think that it's just going to be actors. You know what? I really think that death means less watching TV because, you know, that person didn't actually die. What a stupid way to think about it, especially when there are people that sat there and saying 20, 25, 30 hours into this character, into their friends, into developing these relationships, to just say that, well, it just doesn't mean a lot because you're just watching a screen. Yeah, we're just watching a screen when we're watching you too. Those people aren't really dying either. It's an unfortunate fact of life that those who aren't into video games will never truly understand how much more engaging it is than any other medium. While everyone who's played a story-driven video game has surely at some point read a book, watched a movie, the reverse is not true. Meaning, there are so many people who will never understand the storytelling power of video games, and occasionally it shows. Given what we know about The Last of Us, thanks to the game, you can expect quite a bit of violence in the show. There's going to be at least one clicker biting a chunk out of someone's neck. However, according to the upcoming show's screenwriter, Craig Mazin, it might have a bigger effect in live action than via a video game. Quote, when you're playing a section, you're killing people, when you die, you get sent back to the checkpoint. All those people are back, moving around in the same way, said Mazin in an interview with The New Yorker. Watching a person die, I think, ought to be much different than watching pixels die. Well, inherently, it's probably going to be a little bit different because, again, if you do die and your level gets reset or whatever, blah, 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 back to the beginning, okay, I think people can understand how that would be a little bit different. But the idea of it's going to be so much different in our fake TV show than watching this in a video game. That's the part that some people have a big problem with. I can tell you that there's a lot of games out there that have drawn people to tears. Certainly, The Last of Us, for a lot of people, is one of those more emotional games, whether it's because of deaths, whether it's because of the relationships that are built, whether it's because of tough decisions you have to make, things like that. But it shouldn't really come as a surprise that the person who's in charge of this series and the other person who's helping with this series in Neil Druckmann, a dude who's despised by so many people now because he continued to lie. False copyright struck this channel 2 times to try to silence us. That was a long time ago, Neil. I guess you failed. I guess it didn't work out very well back in the fuck Naughty Dog days when you guys lied to your consumers and tried to get away with it and ended up getting completely and totally destroyed. But they're more than willing to continue to make changes. Elsewhere in the interview, Mazin and Neil Druckmann discussed how Joel would not be the unstoppable action hero he was in the first game. Audiences will notice the wear and tear that time has had on him. We had a conversation about the toll Joel's life would have had on him physically. So he's hard of hearing on one side because of a gunshot. His knees hurt every time he stands up. Neil Druckmann is, of course, no stranger to just changing things just because, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it doesn't fit that character, even if it doesn't respect that character, Neil Druckmann has no problems with that. I wouldn't call Joel an unstoppable action hero. Obviously, everything depended on the way you played the game, right? It's a video game after all. Depending on the video game, sometimes you don't have to eat, sometimes you don't have to sleep, things like that, right? But the idea that they're already admitting that they're going to be changing a bunch of things. I mean, obviously, they're changing people's race. We know that Joel in his brother Tommy are no longer going to be just, straight white males. It's going to be different now. We know that Joel's daughter is now going to be half black. We know a lot of these things that they decided we don't need to stay true to the source material. We'll do our own thing. And this thing is a disaster. It's dead on arrival. If you can't tell just by listening to the people involved speak, then I really don't know what to tell you. The Last of Us is going to be just as big of a disaster as The Last of Us Part 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.